Well, thank you, Kathleen. And I am so excited that we've got TEDx here in Wilmington at this remarkable theater that's a big piece of the rebirth of Market Street here in Wilmington. This is the second annual TEDx here in Wilmington, and it's exciting to me that Wilmington is taking part of this global conversation. TED is a great part of my routine as a senator as I try and keep alive the juices of openness and of innovation and of creativity. In fact, I often listen to TEDTalks on my iPad as I'm running. Actually, my iPhone, not my iPad, as I'm running, sorry. In fact, just last week I listened to one by Leslie Hazelton called The Doubt Essential to Faith. It was a remarkable and I think typical TED Talk in its scope and its insight. It was given by a self-described agnostic Jew biographer of Muhammad who described with elegance and insight the central role that doubt plays in true faith. I'm one of the few senators, I think, who has my exact background. I trained as a chemist and went to law school and divinity school, and I have a master's in ethics and an undergraduate degree in political science, and I spent a lot of time in the nonprofit world and, as you heard, in county government. But I also spent 8 years at a materials-based science company, one of the most innovative privately held companies in America, W.L. Gore & Associates, here in Delaware. And so from that experience and from this range of experiences, I really prioritize innovation. And one of the questions I had when I got to the Senate just 3 years ago was, what are we doing? What is the institution of the Congress doing to hear from, to learn from, to embrace, and to understand the power of this radically democratized digital age where information, ideas, and innovation are coming more rapidly than ever and from a broader range of sources than ever? Well, you may have heard that the Congress is having a little trouble these days with getting new ideas passed, with solving the real problems in front of us. And you may have picked up on the fact that we've got some real challenges both domestically here at home and around the world. In fact, I think in the latest survey, Congress's approval rating was hovering somewhere around 9%, which means we're down to our blood relatives and paid staff, and I'm not so sure about my family anymore. Well, one of the things I found early on was that there are areas where our government does a lot to promote and support and sustain innovation. And there have been fundamental changes in how innovation is done in science. When I was a chemistry major back in the 80s, if you wanted to go do real cutting-edge scientific work as a physicist or a biologist or a chemist, you really had to go to one of the big national labs or to one of the big private labs, Bell Labs, for example, or you had to work for a company like AstraZeneca that had the financing and the resources and the equipment to do significant world-class cutting-edge work. Become miniaturized and the capabilities have become democratized and the teams doing it have become distributed all over the world. The places where folks are innovating and developing new products and new solutions, new techniques, have been spread throughout the world in a truly exciting way. That's part of what it means to live in a digital age. But my concern, frankly, is that we haven't kept pace with that. I'll give you 2 quick examples where I've been working on legislating in recent years. First, there's something called the R&D tax credit. It was created decades ago, and it was a way that Congress created a tax incentive for companies to invest in cutting-edge R&D. Problem is, rather than making it permanent, it expires about every 6 days. It expires about every year, year and a half. And so there has to be a frenzy of lobbying in order to restore it. And it's not accessible to early-stage startups, exactly those companies that are most likely to be creating newest solutions to our most pressing problems. It's only accessible to well-established and larger companies. And so this R&D tax credit has gradually ossified in terms of its relevance. I've managed to find great bipartisan partners, and we've introduced a bill that would modernize this R&D tax credit, make it accessible to early-stage startups, and make it permanent. That's been an exciting prospect for me, but it's taken a lot of time and been difficult. One other area is in clean energy. The United States currently, in some sectors in renewable energy, leads the world, and there is a global marketplace wide open to us. But other countries, because they have more innovative policy frameworks or because they're investing more as a nation, are zooming ahead of us in terms of taking advantage of the opportunities. While we fight in Congress, other communities, other countries, other companies are seizing the opportunities created by this new global marketplace in clean energy. Well, there's a decades-old tax structure called master limited partnerships, widely known and well used by the oil and gas and pipeline industry, but by statute, inaccessible to renewable energy. No one can quite explain why. I've worked hard the last 3 years to recruit Republican co-sponsors in the House and in the Senate to introduce a bill that, it's simple, it's 600 words. It opens up this tax structure so that energy efficiency and wind and solar and biomass and hydrokinetics, all sorts of different forms of innovative renewable energy can take advantage of this tax structure. And I've been pleasantly surprised at the reach of other senators and congressmen from all over the ideological spectrum willing to partner to come up with a solution that makes good policy and, frankly, good politics, that makes real the idea of an all-of-the-above energy solution that promotes our energy independence and our energy competitiveness. Well, these are rare examples of innovation in legislation. And I'm going to close with just some observations about the institution of the Senate. Because in the same way that big science has now become democratized and radically atomized, and innovations are happening in small startups and labs around this country and around the world, so too is social policy innovation happening in lots of different places than it was before. It's not just a few think tanks in Washington or a few agencies of the federal government that are likely going to come up with groundbreaking solutions to problems that face us, from recidivism and folks who need to be better supported as they re-enter society after serving a term in prison, or making sure that veterans who return from serving us overseas are connected to employment opportunities, or dealing with aging infrastructure. We need help figuring these things out and being innovative in how we address them. If you look at the Senate of the United States, you might not think of the Senate as an institution built for speed. In fact, we are in many ways a diesel institution in a digital age. But I want to leave you with a little hope, so let me give two brief examples if I might. Although the average age of the Senate reaches well into the 70s, there's been significant turnover just in the last few years. 60% of the current Senate has been there 6 years or less. There's now 20 U.S. senators who are women, chairing most of the important committees of the Senate, including the Budget and Appropriations Committee. There is a broader range of diversity in background and life experience and ideas, and frankly, age and term of experience doesn't necessarily predict openness to innovation. Senator Pat Leahy of Vermont, the longest-serving current U.S. senator, is probably the most current in terms of the digital world and the issues of invention and innovation that we need to more openly embrace. Think about constituent mail, letters from home. That's one of the oldest things that dominates the daily work of any Senate office. Today, 96% of the input I get from Delawareans comes electronically, from Facebook, from Twitter, from email, overwhelmingly from email. And the 5,000 letters that I send back to Delaware every month are overwhelmingly sent by email. I'm sorry for the Postal Service for the loss of volume. But we are communicating and listening to our constituents in ways that are more digital than the more antiquated hand-mailed letter. One other thought, the State of the Union, an annual address where the President comes and lays out his vision before the Congress. What's your sense of what the members of the House and Senate do during that particular speech? Well, one side leaps to their feet and applauds wildly at virtually anything that's said, and the other sits there glumly with their arms crossed and glowering at the floor. Actually, no. In this most hidebound and tradition-oriented of institutions, where as a presiding officer, and I get a chance to preside at times, literally the gavel of the Continental Congress itself sits there on the desk in front of you. In this oldest and most continuous of American political institutions, we've engaged in a little innovation recently that I just wanted to leave you with as a note of encouragement. A bipartisan group challenged us in 2010 to begin going to the State of the Union not in lockstep with Republicans on one side and Democrats on the other, presenting this visual of leaping to our feet and glumly sitting, but instead to pair off and to mix it up. And it's happened all 3 times that I've had the opportunity to go to the State of the Union. I've picked a Republican colleague, and we've filed in pairs, and we've lined up in no particular order. What difference does that make? Well, just a few weeks ago, we had a near crisis, the so-called nuclear option, when we were threatening in my caucus, the Democrats, to change the rules of the Senate to get over intransigence by Republicans in order to get some confirmations moving for the president. And the night before we were to take this historic vote that would change these decades-old rules of the Senate, We gathered as a group of senators privately in the old Senate chamber. No press, no lobbyists, no staff, no one but the senators themselves. And as we walked in without anyone having mentioned it beforehand, what happened? Did we automatically file Republicans to one side, Democrats to the other? No. We went in and mixed it up and sat in a way that you couldn't have predicted the pattern. And the discussion that resulted was one of the most open and integrated and constructive I've heard in this time-bound institution. I do think it's possible for us to change, but it's only going to change through the input of folks like you, through the opportunities that senators have to listen to TED and TEDx, to listen to new ideas, to new suggestions, and to new ways of thinking and of researching and of creating. It's my hope that in whatever time I get to serve in the Senate, I can push relentlessly for us to be open as an institution to new ways of debating, new ways of making decisions, and new ways of confronting the very real challenges that face us. And TEDx here in Wilmington, and it's one of the most exciting things I can think of as I go back to Washington this fall and as we tackle the very real problems ahead. So don't stop innovating, don't stop communicating, and don't stop dreaming big dreams and having clear and challenging ideas. Thank you.